Welcome to the Sykes Bottom Line Pharmacy Podcast, your regular dose of pharmacy CPA advice to fuel your bottom line, featuring pharmacists, key vendors, and other innovators. All right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Sykes Pharmacy Podcast, Bottom Line Podcast. Get that right one of these days. Today we have Chris Sykes with Sykes Company, IT director here at Sykes Company. We have two full-time IT staff members with our firm, and Chris Sykes heads up our IT, which is a monumental task. I can't tell you how great of a job he does and how important it is to our firm. But we wanted to get him on today and kind of see pick his brain about IT security and IT in general, from maybe and how that applies to pharmacies and things to know and be aware of. So, Chris, give us welcome and give us a little background on you before we get rolling here.
Yeah, thank you, Scotty, Bonnie, and Kendell for having me on today. As Scotty said, I'm Chris Sykes, the director of IT at Sykes Company. Been with the company since 2006, I believe, 2006, and have been in the IT role ever since then. And glad to be here. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to talking all things IT and how maybe we can impact pharmacies as well with our IT expertise and advice.
And Chris is my brother.
So I have
Chris is my brother, for the record, for all the podcasters out there.
I do have a really quick question for Chris, kind of an icebreaker here before we get into the fun stuff. Chris, I heard a rumor about you. So Chris is a runner. He runs marathons. It's pretty impressive.
Very impressive.
But I did hear from someone over the weekend that you had quite an experience maybe a week or two ago that you ended up running and ended up in the back of a pickup truck. I heard this.
I take dogs pretty often, but this dog was particularly not a nice dog, and wanted to pretty much eat me. And so I found the closest thing to climb onto, and it happened to be the back of a pickup truck. And,
wow!
I got away from that disaster. I made it out. Unharmed, thank goodness. But yeah, that was a scary experience. I have not run that way ever since. So
I heard about that this weekend, and I was like, I might bring that up.
That might be a new training technique. To increase your speed. Yeah, right. Every mile or so, just send the dogs at you.
It was definitely sprint speed. I'm going to tell you that. And I have a new route to run. So.
Well, while we're talking about the running real quick and Chris's extracurriculars, he did make it to the Boston Marathon, and COVID hit for the first time in 100 plus years. They canceled Boston, and you didn't get to go. So what a shame, but I know you're working on getting back in there. So,
slowly but surely, it takes a while to qualify and all that, but I enjoy running just for overall health and just the routine of it. I enjoy. So maybe one day I'll get.
That's how you blow off. That's how you blow off steam after a day's work at Sykes Company dealing with all the IT issues. Is you run for hours.
We're talking about health. Let's talk about the health of IT for pharmacies, Chris. Give us a little general update now where maybe IT security is in general. What's new and hot out there today in terms of IT in general, and then we can get more into maybe some pharmacy specific items.
Yeah, IT today is, it's kind of cliche. IT today is not what it was a year ago. It changes so much. Everybody knows that. Except nowadays, everything is so risky. Whether you're surfing the internet, doing a search on Google, checking an email, everything has so much risk, more risk to it than it used to. And so with all that risk, and the fact that we do a lot of business in the cloud now, it just ups the risk even more. And so with that risk, you have to implement basically countermeasures. You have to have your defenses up. You have to employ different systems and services and firewalls and software to allow yourself to operate in the cloud and on the internet with less risk. It's all about minimizing your risk. You're never going to get rid of the risk. It's just about how much you can minimize the risk. And so it's just a balance.
And what is that risk?
Well, let's just say let's just say you store files in the cloud, whether it's Google Drive, whether it's OneDrive from Microsoft, whatever it might be, maybe Dropbox. Your data is in someone else's hands. The risk there is that Google, for example, your Google Drive may get compromised by a nation state attacker, let's say, North Korea or whatever it might be. And so the data is not in your house. It's not in your office. It's somewhere out in the data center that is susceptible to that risk. So there's always that chance, no matter where you house your data. Even if your data is behind your four walls, it can still be breached and compromised. So there's plenty. That's just one example of it, like a data risk, having your data in someone else's cloud or whatever. There's email risk. Are you opening up every attachment that you get, or are you very aware of what attachments you should or should not be opening, or links for that matter, links and emails? Should you be clicking on these links? There's risks in everything. Just a click is a risk. So it takes some education. It takes training. Speaking of training, we here at Sykes Company do what's called security awareness training, where we have simulated phish attack emails that are distributed to our staff, and it tests them on whether they click things or they don't click things. And it's just a good reminder for them every month to stay aware, to don't get complacent with just any email coming in, even if it's from somebody We have videos, security training videos, like what to look for in social media, social engineering attacks, those sorts of things, all kinds of stuff. So training helps to minimize the risk. That's probably the single biggest thing a firm can do, or a pharmacy for that matter can do, is just training their end users what to do, what not to do on their systems. It's probably your single biggest.
Because what's sad to me, Chris, is that it's almost like you have to scrutinize and question every single thing you get. So I just sent an email to Chris this morning that dealt with my daughter and dealt with the school that I know she attends, but it looked super weird. It just didn't look like something it should have. So, and it ended up, I think it's probably fine, but you have to question. And then I find it's gotten even worse, Chris, is use of that kind of thing on cell phones. So now I used to not get a lot of that on my cell phone, but I get texts constantly now wanting you to click this link, and from places that look like PayPal and things like that, and telling you, usually that's trying to help you. Hey, I think there's some fraudulent activity. Click this link so you can go to these things to look. And it's not, so everything you look at, it seems like that's kind of the going thing. You have to question every.
Sure do. And you mentioned, your iPhones and texting. I mean, before the meeting here or the podcast started, we were talking about the Apple breach a couple weeks ago. Well, not breach, excuse me. It was a vulnerability that was found in their software. So basically, it was a vulnerability that basically opened up your whole phone for intrusion and attacks, and basically takeover of your phone. I mean, Apple was.
Oh wow!
I've seen Apple try to push out an update so fervently. Then they did that one. That was a pretty big hole, and so the last thing you want is your iPhone to be taken over. And then little bit you may not know that it's taken over, and here you are looking at your bank site or whatever on your phone, and somebody's just watching you. Probably, so many risks out there. Whether it's a PC, a Mac, an iPhone, an Android. It doesn't matter. They're all susceptible.
Yeah. And obviously it's super risky for in our firm, in our practice. We're dealing with lots of social security numbers, bank accounts, things like that. But with pharmacies as well, on their platforms, if you're talking about their computer systems and things, I mean, they have all of this health information out there, personal information on all of their patients. So I would think that that is something that is equally important, just as we have to
That's
deal with here.
valuable information. Yep.
Yeah, there's PII. There's a lot of pharmacies are under HIPAA regulations with medical data.
Right.
They really have to take care of your data. Know where it is. Know who has access to it. Know what's in front of it. What's guarding it. For example, a lot of factors to take into account for pharmacy medical related data for sure.
And Chris, I do have a question. So at our firm, we're fortunate enough to have you and Joseph here with us. And sometimes when there's a vulnerability or something new that's going around, you'll send an email out to the whole firm. And then I take that email and I forward it to my family just so they know that, hey, this is what's circling around in the marketplace.
Yeah.
So my question is this. You mentioned training, and the training that we do is very helpful. I've learned a lot. What would you say to a pharmacist who doesn't have an in-house IT person? What kind of training, or how do they get access to training to make sure that not only them, but I guess more importantly, their staff doesn't do something or have an action that would allow their pharmacy to be vulnerable?
Yeah, that's a good question. Most pharmacies don't have internal IT staffs. I can maybe think of one or two clients we have that are very large, multiple store clients that may have an IT person, but most pharmacies that we do business with have outsourced their IT. And so, Kendell, my first thing there for training is if I was the pharmacy owner, I would be asking that third-party IT provider, do they offer some sort of security awareness training? Just start there.
Okay.
They're providing the IT. Most likely they will provide something. If not provided, they'll give you a good direction of where you can go. Likewise, we at Sykes Company can offer some ideas as well for security training if a pharmacy is seeking for that. But I think a good starting point would be their IT provider.
And
yeah, from the things that I've heard from other pharmacists that we work with, I think what you mentioned earlier, Chris, makes a lot of sense. It's really about the staff, maybe not even the owner, because the way I'm seeing some of these things done and penetrated would be through the staff, through calling and telling them, hey, we're Dell or we're whoever, and we need to do an update on your computer system. And they're like, okay, and they give them whatever, and they jump on the computer system and grab it. And also through the phone lines, I think the same way, and websites and things like that, telling them that there's somebody else and it sounds legitimate, and they're able to capture, information that way. So it really starts with the staff, I would think, education with that.
It does, Bonnie. I mean, just the Cisco breach a couple weeks ago. Here's another example of what you're saying here. I'm reading a headline here on my other screen, and it says this is regarding the Cisco breach. It says the hackers were able to gain access to Cisco's system by duping one of its employees and allegedly took 2.75 gigabytes of data. And so that one employee was probably phished, through an email, more than likely.
What's phish? Well, kind of go over what phish is.
Phish? So a phishing email. I'm not saying this is what happened, but a general phish email would be like an email comes from the owner of the company to you, and so it looks like it came from somebody somebody legitimate. They posed as someone else, and basically use that as a front to try and gain access to an account of yours, or send money or wire money or log in here. Here's a link, click here and log in, and you can access this file I'm sending you. Numerous ways, but basically they're tricking you to click something, to give up your credentials, and once they have your credentials, then it's pretty much over at that point. Then they have access to your data and everything. So lots of different types of phishing out there, but those are the really most common ways that employees are tricked into something happening.
Yeah. And Chris, so what does it look like if you do have a breach? That can be expensive, I'm assuming, to recover from that.
Yes.
Correct.
It depends on how quickly you find the breach, I think, to begin with. Did the breach just happen 5 minutes ago and you just realized it pretty quickly? If you can stop the bleeding within, let's just say within an hour, it may not get so bad. But if it's a lot of times these breaches have been going on for weeks and firms and companies don't even know it. There's been virus malware installed on networks, just reporting back all kinds of information, and the companies don't even know it. So it depends on how long the breach has been in place. And then once the breach is recognized, then you can start dealing with the after effects, which would be obviously implementing your incident response plan. So it's, it goes without saying, you need to have an incident response plan so the owners of the company, the shareholders of the company can all react instead of, react according to your plan instead of off the hip. You want to know exactly what to do when something happens, so you know who to call. Do you call the FBI first and then call, whoever second? But you need to have a plan in place because it's, what do they say? It's not if, it's when. And so very important to have a plan in place, even if it's a basic plan. Just put something together, one page, if you will, of who you're going to call. If something happens, what are you going to do immediately if something happens? Are you going to pull the plug from your server, whatever it might be? You need to have some sort of basic plan. And your IT provider, going back to Kendell's question earlier, who do you get to help you with that? Same person. It's your IT provider that would help you with an incident response plan. It probably is not a part of your month-to-month IT subscription that you have with your provider. So maybe something a la carte that you would have to pay extra for, but it's well worth the money to have something in place.
And I would guess and assume that anyone who, and a lot of our clients do, a lot of our pharmacies have a website presence, obviously, and then they do some business on there, even if it's just refills and that information's being sent. So I think anytime you have a website, you've got to make sure you have a good protection with your website as well.
Yeah, obviously the website, you want to make sure that your website has a secure certificate and that it's SSL encrypted, through a secure certificate, which most are these days. You also want to make sure you're using the correct websites. There's a lot of websites that look legit, but they are basically a duplicate. They're a bad website that's a duplicate of a good website. So you can be tricked into clicking links and it's not quite the right website. So a lot of website vulnerabilities out there too. Websites get hacked also. And that's how a lot of malware comes in the network. Somebody will click a link or an ad or something in the website and download a virus or malware and not even know it sometimes.
Oh, wow.
And so website security is important too. And that kind of segues into, a firewall on your network, basics. Mm-hmm. Everyone should have a basic firewall with a subscription service with malware protection on it, on their network. Even if they've only got 2 or 3 computers, you need a firewall, especially if you've got customer data behind that, on your network.
Chris, what about, you mentioned outsource. I want to get into some things you can do to protect yourself. But kind of, you've touched on the outsourced IT, which a lot of pharmacies do. And what are some basic things to look for when you are maybe looking for an outsourced IT? What do you want to see in an outsourced IT? Maybe the good and the bad, as you kind of look for outsourcing.
You want a firm that is proactive. You want a firm that'll meet with you regularly on emerging threats, upgrades that they may recommend for your company, for your pharmacy. You don't want someone just sitting back patching vulnerabilities, kind of when it's convenient, or wait for something to break and then they'll come and fix it a couple days later. You want somebody that's cutting edge, somebody that's motivated to take care of your firm security wise, I think security is key here. You want security, I would think, at number one. You want to be protected. Number two, you want to look for an IT provider that can upgrade your systems when they're outdated. You want to have your updates in place. You don't want old operating systems. You don't want old antivirus. You want to stay up to date on everything. Someone who can communicate. I mean, communication is so critical. And reaction time. You know, if you email your IT provider, got a problem, you don't want to wait 6-8 hours for an answer. It could be very important. You want to hear back from somebody within an hour or less. So look for someone who's responsive and somebody that is willing to help you each and every day. I mean, because you're going to have issues every day. You're going to have questions, and you don't want to wait for answers. It's frustrating.
Uh-huh.
And Scotty, Kendell, I believe I have seen a vendor or two at some of the trade shows that specialize with IT, just with the pharmacy industry. I can't remember what they are, but I think if you look into that, that could be an option that would be nice, is to have someone with that, experience to at least look into and see if, that could be a possibility, because they would understand the pharmacy industry and kind of the ins and outs of what goes on with that.
And imagine a lot of pharmacies don't have anybody. They're kind of winging it. Need to have somebody in the background at a minimum to get those basic security procedures in place. Training if necessary, and then of course just IT hardware and support and things like that, I would think would be a minimum.
The education. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another good minimum is a risk.
It's like
staff
it's
training
ongoing.
is huge.
Yeah, it is ongoing. A risk assessment is a great place to start. I mean, if you've never dealt with security and you want to start, get a risk assessment. Get a firm that can do a risk assessment, and they'll give you a baseline of where you stand. You could be at the way bottom, but at least you'll know what you need to improve on. You'll know, they'll give you direction on how to improve, and it'll help you to know where you stand, and help you to move in the right.
I do love that you guys send us out those internal emails trying to catch us. It's actually kind of humorous. I mean, I think it's perfect because we know that those are out there. And so it does help, because I can't tell you how many times I look at something and I'm like, are they trying to get me? But I would like to know, Chris, how are we doing this?
It's funny you ask, because I just got the email over the weekend. It's how well you did. And guess how many clicks there were on bad emails? Take a wild guess.
All from Bonnie. Bonnie did them all.
Yeah. Does it tell you who does them? Because that's embarrassing.
The email just gives me like a quick overview. It just shows me clicks. It doesn't say who, but we only had one click.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Well,
see, that shows you how important it is. And if you are educated and the staff understands what to look for, it can make a big difference.
And I've seen the trends. I mean, we've been on the user awareness training for, I don't know, maybe 3 to 4 years now at least. And I've seen it trends. I mean, I've seen some months where there's been no clicks, but there's usually 3 or less clicks every month on bad emails, and which is awesome. I mean, the user, I cannot stress how beneficial having the user awareness training is, because it is the gateway drug, if you will, for hackers to make it into your network. It is the easiest way for them to come in.
And I think I got 2 questions on that front, on that exact thing. For one, a lot of the bad emails probably doesn't even make it to our inboxes because you've already set up security. Right. So I don't know if you could speak a little bit to what someone would need to do at a pharmacy level to kind of get that level of security, that initial defense, so that a lot of bad items don't even get through.
Yeah, that's a great point, Kendell. We have email filtering. We got actually 2 filters. We have what's called Proofpoint, which is just a web. It's a cloud-based email filtering service. So it'll filter out bad emails, bad attachments, bad links. A lot of that is filtered out. I'd say 90 98% of the bad stuff doesn't even make it to our inboxes. However, it's not 100%. Nothing in IT as far as security software is going to be 100%. And so, you plan for that 1% that's going to come through. Office 365. I'm sure a lot of pharmacies have Office 365 for email. Certain plans in the Office 365 infrastructure has built-in email filtering that is you're able to use it for free with your plan. So look into that. Look into the plan maybe that you have if you're a pharmacy listening in, because you could already have it and may not know it. So there's several options out there for mail filtering for sure. And they also have I think it's called I'm not sure their specific name, but it's basically link defense. So when you click on a link in an email, certain Office 365 plans will scan that link before it loads on your screen. And if it's bad, it won't load. And so a lot of that is included in plans as well. So a lot of protection is available out there that a lot of pharmacies may not realize they already have, just depending on what they use for email. But if you're on Gmail, a lot of pharmacies use Gmail. And the protections probably aren't quite as good there as they would be in the Microsoft 365 infrastructure. So something to think about.
And my second question is when I think of before I took these trainings, when I thought about being attacked or hacked, I was imagining it was like Microsoft versus some bad guys and they're just coding. But then the term social engineering has been highlighted as really the main way people are getting in. It's not just people battling each other via code, but social engineering. And we've talked about it a little bit today, but if you could just, highlight a little bit the fact that, how prevalent social engineering is when it comes to being hacked.
Yeah. Social engineering is where the hacker plays with your emotions. They use your emotions. They use your weaknesses with your emotions to try and gain access to something. You may get an email that has, I'm just trying to think of something, I don't know, save the hungry in another country. They put a picture of someone that's hungry and they need money donated because they have no food. They'll play with your emotions somehow, and it makes you get interested, might make you click, and then one thing leads to another, and you may be wiring money to some other country, to a hacker. I mean, that's a crazy example, but that's similar to what a social engineering is. They play with your emotions to try and get you to do something you wouldn't normally do or click on. It could be a phone call. You could get a phone call and be social engineered over the phone. Hey, this is your bank, Bank of America, we're calling you because of this, and this. You have an unpaid fine or whatever it might be, and they'll social engineer you over the phone and make you end up paying money or whatever over the phone. It could be a text message. They call it smishing, SMS smishing. Mm-hmm. So you could be fooled over a text message somehow. So a lot of different ways to be social engineered. But it all goes back to awareness training. So what to look for. You've heard President Reagan said, trust but verify. That doesn't work in the IT world. It's don't trust and verify first. So
then verify.
So you talked on firewalls, Chris, mail filtering. Let's see, passwords obvious. I mean, we don't need to spend time. Don't have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 as your password. Or use those phrases. I like to play golf or whatever.
Yeah.
MFA.
Yeah.
We're starting to see a lot of.
Now we know Scotty's password. Right. You're gonna need to change it today.
Chris, what about MFA? We see a lot. We do a lot of MFA here. Multi-factor authentication. We do a lot about that here. Touch on that briefly, if you would.
Yeah. So, real quick, passwords. Just be sure your passwords, I would say, are at least 16 characters, combination of letters, numbers, special characters, that sort of thing. And don't make it easy to guess. Use a password generator. You can just Google it and it'll generate a good password for you. Multi-factor.
Or those password apps too.
Yeah, there's password apps. There's LastPass. There's 1Password. Many password managers out there that are great, and that I highly recommend any pharmacy to use. LastPass is what we use internally. And multi-factor, it kind of goes without saying, you should have multi-factor, or it's sometimes called two-factor authentication, on every single account you have. Bank, retirement accounts, it does not matter. Email accounts, you want multi-factor authentication on everything. It goes without saying, hackers have already they can get around multi-factor too, but it makes it a lot harder for a hacker to access an account if you have multi-factor enabled. You can download Microsoft Authenticator on your phone, Google Authenticator, Duo, many different authenticator apps to use where you scan the barcode and then it puts a code on your phone. Definitely better to use the Authenticator app when setting up multi-factor than getting a text message code. It works. Text message code is fine, but if you can choose, always use an Authenticator app. It's more secure than a text message code. So be sure you have that set up on everything, without a doubt.
And Chris, what about sharing documents? We share a lot of documents here with our clients and use secure portals and things like that. And sometimes there's email requests, and sharing documents can be a vulnerability for sure. Any tips there?
Yeah. Number one tip is don't email an attachment unless it's just something that is not important. If there's any numbers, data, especially PII type of data, especially medical data, you want to always move that data through a encrypted method of transporting. So we use what's called ShareFile, which is a file sharing service, and we can send documents back and forth to our clients encrypted. Basically uploads it to ShareFile's cloud, and then the client gets a link, and then they can download it securely. That's just one way. There's many different ways, but you don't want to email. You don't want to email attachments if you can help it. Always use some sort of file sharing service to send secure documents.
So any of our clients that are listening, they can understand the reason why we do this now. If they don't understand it already, we're not just being a pain. We're trying to protect them, to make them use ShareFile. There is a reason behind that.
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing is to protect our clients' data. It's not to make life inconvenient for our customers or clients. It's to keep keep documents secure, to keep data secure at all times, but at the same time accessible. There's a fine line there. And so we definitely have that as the number one priority, is keeping our clients' information safe.
And your patient's data there at the pharmacy.
Right. It goes
Absolutely.
all the way through, right?
Yeah,
for sure.
And this topic's never going to go away. I mean, as long as this digital world we live in, it's just going to grow and grow and grow and get, more complex. So these are things, if you're not doing anything, you got to do something.
That's right.
So,
and
can I give my bottom line? Can I go first? My bottom line, my takeaway from this, because I've learned a lot too, really is I guess the first would be an assessment, Chris, maybe, just to see where you are. But then I think from the little bit of research I've done with pharmacists in this IT and the things that I've seen happen with some of the clients that I work with, is it really has to do with educating staff. Because like we mentioned, a lot of what happens in a pharmacy is going to come through on a phone call and email. And if they're equipped with understanding, what to look for, I think they will be in great shape to know, to verify, like we mentioned, before they move forward with anything like that.
Yeah.
I'll go next. I think my bottom line is obviously an assessment of some sort, find an outsourced IT that fits your needs. That's going to cover those basics, and then awareness training. Kendell, how about you? Bottom line.
My bottom line, I think that this IT and security especially is just going to be something ongoing. So you have to have a relationship with somebody who knows what's going on. Because, I mean, we're fortunate to have Chris. But for the pharmacist, you have to have a relationship with somebody who knows what's going on, who can keep you up to date.
Yep.
All right, Chris, close us out. What's your bottom line?
I'd say the bottom line is, like you guys said, get a risk assessment. Just get an IT assessment of any type. Make sure you have updated antivirus. Make sure you have a firewall. Get the basics in place if you don't have that already. Do what you can to protect as quickly as you can, and then get some advice on how to move forward and begin adding in some layers over time to make yourself more secure as the years go on. You're not going to be able to pile everything on in the beginning. Just start slow, keep adding a layer here and there, and continue to progress in your security posture, and you'll be protected. Your customers will be protected, and you'll be good for the longer term.
Very informative, Kendell, IT discussion here. So the ARCS, or not the ARCS assessment, but the IT assessment, Chris, you are willing and able to assist any pharmacies that have questions in this area. How can they get up with you?
Sure. I'd be glad to speak with our clients. You can reach me at chris@Sykes-CPA.com. You can always call our main number, 252-482-7644, and ask to speak with me. And I'd be glad to speak with you, see where you stand with your IT, maybe offer some guidance, and just have a conversation on your IT posture, and as well as your security as well. So be glad to speak with you.
All right. Well, appreciate you getting on today, Chris. Very informative, and
very. We'll
have to do this one again because this one's not going away. So appreciate everybody listening. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
You can call me, because we the best, Sykes Company. We the best, Sykes Company. Your accounting is a mess. There's no need for you to stress. Go online and request from the best. We the